Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Quentin Hill. Carpentaria Resources' Hawsons Iron project is located near Broken Hill. The project has high forecast returns, outstanding for the commodity and project type, and unmatched product demand for its supergrade product. A unique pellet feed product that meets the long-term global demand profile for high-quality inputs and decarbonisation of steelmaking. The US $1.4 billion Magnite project is located in an ideal location for operations with all existing power, rail and port infrastructure available for start-up operation. So presenting on behalf of Carpentaria Resources, please welcome Managing Director Quentin Hill.
Oh, thank you, Nicola, and thank you for that fulsome introduction. I would just like to check that the presentation is up on screen.
You're on screen.
Very good. Okay, well, so good to, I guess, see you all virtually, and thanks in advance for listening to what is a story that is, after many years, poised to reward its shareholders. I'll get to that in a minute, but I'd firstly like to thank Kieran and Nicola and Tim for their persistence in putting this conference together. Today, I want to leave you able to make an informed decision on the likely timing of our development, a full understanding of what it is we propose, and the stage we are at. So my presentation will start with the recent developments and what we are doing to move the project forward, why it will be developed. Then I'll walk through the project itself and then wrap up with a summary of my message to you and hand over to questions. So let's move on. The project is a world-class resource project planning to produce 10 million tonnes of supergrade iron concentrate production for 20 years, with potential to extend and expand. This is underpinned by a rock-solid pre-feasibility study undertaken by GHD. It will produce the world's best iron ore product, which we call Hawsons Supergrade at 70% Fe. It is the world's leading high-quality iron ore project and will be developed because there are very few viable high-quality iron ore projects out there. The company has recently reset its commercial platform and a company refresh is underway. And, importantly, iron ore markets are outperforming and, in fact, booming. So there is a lot of interest in our new platform and refresh. And while you are here for procurement and business opportunities, I can tell you, in my view, there is also great potential for uplift in the share price. So let me expand on some of these points. I'm going to talk a little bit about green steel. The product is the world's best iron ore product at 70% Fe and low impurities. Highest quality product attracts a premium price. We've allowed for a $25 a tonne premium over the benchmark price in the PFS, but at today's prices, expect around $45 a tonne over the benchmark, which is about $211 today. We expect that to increase over time as green steel becomes more of an imperative. So, that makes Hawsons a green steel leader. It has the highest iron content in the world and low impurities. The industry is focusing on green steel and reducing emissions. The world's largest steelmakers, China, Germany, Japan and Korea, are all targeting net zero emissions by 2050 or 60, and that will need a change in technology. Momentum is building. All the major producers see the writing on the wall and are now focusing their minds on reducing their own and their customers' emissions, Scope 3 emissions. Vale has an MOU with Mitsui to investigate low CO2 metallics. BHP has invested in an electrolysis process to make iron from ore using electricity. And Rio Tinto recently announced studies for green steel with its own concentrate mine and the Iron Ore Company of Canada, IOC. Given mining and processing energy and emissions is an order of magnitude lower than that through the steel making is where the rubber hits the road or the emissions really kick out. It is the truth that having the highest iron content in the world means Hawsons is the greenest iron ore product on the planet. This will drive project development. The path to lower emissions by steelmakers is driven by their customers, but it will be a rocky and competitive road, and there will be some winners and losers. It will be incremental and dependent upon metallic supply and technology. I'll just run through, I guess, the three main technologies here, right? Blast furnace technology needs coking coal to give the furnace its structural support. It can lower emissions by increasing quality of inputs, such as high-grade ore, more scrap or HBI. That is, more iron units and less waste. But the blast furnace emissions reductions can be incremental only. Currently, they produce 2 tonnes of CO2 for every tonne of steel. China is responsible for half the world's steelmaking, and its steelmaking furnaces are young and have another 30 years' life left. If China is to reduce emissions, it will need higher grade ore. To incentivise this, it is rumoured the emission trading system for the steel industry in China will be set in 2025, meaning an even higher premium for our product. Other technologies, such as electrolysis that Mr. Forrest spoke about and BHP are investigating, are much further away, decades, with significant challenges to overcome. The leading technology to reduce emissions in steelmaking is direct reduction, which uses natural gas, which is reformed to hydrogen as the reductant. This technology is responsible for about 10 to 15% of steelmaking today, and is twice as efficient as a blast furnace. So you only get 1 tonne of carbon for 1 tonne of steel. There is no coal. It is clear that using hydrogen made from renewable power in a DRI plant would be zero emission steel, which is the focus of many, and so it should be. The first issue is the cost of hydrogen, but let's assume that will be improved. Then it is iron ore. It's important to know that DRI doesn't remove the gangue in the iron. What you put in is what you get out. If there is too much waste in the DRI, the costs at the next step in the electric arc furnace are too high and productivity too low. DRI plants solve this with highest quality iron ore. Coming back to our project, typically less than 3% waste is needed for viability. So we have a situation where the best technology, DRI, needs very high quality ore to be viable. Is in use now with natural gas and is easily adapted for renewable hydrogen when viable. The only way blast furnaces can reduce emissions is with high quality inputs, and other technology alternatives are decades away. If companies are serious about net zero, and they are because their customers are, and in Japan is leading the way there, they will need to act. Companies wishing to reduce emissions need higher quality iron ore, and there is not enough to go around, and Hawsons is the standout development project. This means that Hawsons Supergrade is extremely well placed to support lower steelmaking emissions, but at 10 million tonnes, we can only help a few steelmakers, so we expect to drum up significant competition for our ore and value for our shareholders. So that's a long-winded way to say we will get developed. We are the world's leading undeveloped iron ore project, and we can have a look at this Wood Mackenzie chart. We have grade along the bottom and rate of return on the vertical. Wood Mackenzie's message is that the highest grade products give the best returns. That is because the premiums for high quality are going up, and those that produce it, the projects are more profitable. My message is that there are very few viable projects at forecast prices, and Hawsons is clearly the standout. And that there are very few projects that can produce DRI quality. In fact, the only ones that can produce it at a reasonable return is Hawsons. You can see the DRI quality line and the vertical. So there are very few viable alternatives to increase the supply of high quality ore. What have we been doing? Carpentaria has reset its commercial platform. Carpentaria will take control of 94% of the Hawsons project, up from 69%, which improves the commercial case immeasurably, allowing a more attractive investment case than before. The company is refreshing, setting it up for the next 2 stages of development, feasibility and construction. and please stay tuned. The current objective is to attract the $32 million feasibility study funding. That will be the signal for this audience, you, to become involved. And lastly, before I get onto the project, iron ore markets are booming. You can see on the right chart. And investor interest is high. China's steel production peak has stubbornly not yet been reached, with 16 quarters of year-on-year production growth and no sign of reducing. Consequently, iron ore prices are at 9-year highs. Our product today would fetch over $210 a tonne. So onto the project. The project is at the pre-feasibility study level with an estimated capital cost of $1.4 billion, with a payback period of 3 to 4 years, or at today's prices, less than 1. We target production in 3.5 years' time, subject to funding. The PFS done by GHD is based on 10 million tonnes of supergrade production over 20 years, and there is sufficient inferred resources to extend or increase production. The costs are very competitive. The key is our unique ore that is very soft and has low variability. This means we do not expect the challenges of other hard-to-process magnetite projects. I know Iron Bridge is in review. These benefits and those of existing infrastructure offset the higher mining and processing volume and lead to very attractive returns, as you can see. The project is located 60 kilometres southwest from Broken Hill, right on the border, close to rail, power and water. The power connection is 35 kilometres to the east on the Broken Hill 200 kVA line. Most people here will know that Broken Hill is a renewable hub with 250 megawatts of solar and wind generation, and we may well choose to have our own solar farm. But this is not part of our proposal at the moment. We will be using a peak of 130 megawatts of power, but typically around 90 megawatts, and there's plenty of spare capacity in that line. The bore field is 90 kilometres to the south. It is a high-yield aquifer of which we have done the necessary pump tests to define. Water is available under the existing regulations. So on to the mine itself. It will be a big hole. Ultimately, it will be 3 kilometres by 1 kilometre and 400 to 500 metres deep. Mining will be truck and shovel, switching to in-pit convey when economic supports. There is a significant pre-strip component of 140 million tonnes, and once this is done, a low strip ratio of 0.3. In the first 10 years of mining, it is proposed to move 140 million tonnes per annum of material, dropping to 70 million tonnes in the later years as most of the waste will be removed. There is still plenty of scope to optimise this during the BFS. It has a low in situ grade with a yield of 14%. That is 14 tonnes of supergrade product per 100 tonne of ore. But again, it's offset by all the good qualities of the soft ore and the low strip ratio. Now, I'm going to move now to a bit of a fly-through. So let's test the technology, and hopefully we've got it working. Look at that. So I'll just hit play. You can see the mine site there. It's pretty flat out in Broken Hill. The plant is where we exploit all the good characteristics of the ore, with a work index of 6 and a very low abrasion index of around 0.12. We save $20 a tonne of product compared to the hard ores. We have an RO plant to freshen the water for slurry transport. Primary crushers will crush 70 million tonnes per annum using 2 stages of hammer mills, a luxury afforded by the soft ore. Crushing is more efficient than grinding, so we save more money again. The screening circuit makes sure we get to 1 millimetre from the crushing circuit. Part of the benefit of the ore is we generate lots of fines early, which means at the rougher magnetic separator, we reject nearly 50% of the mass. This means by the time we get to the ball mills, and I think we have 4 7-megawatt ball mills in there. We have halved the material to be processed. Putting through around 40 million tonnes to reduce to a size of around 40 microns. From the ball mill, it goes into the cleaner magnetic separator where we get around 66 to 67% Fe product. And the next step, where I've paused it, is one we can do because of the ore type and others can't. The hydro separator, upcurrent classifier or elutriation, whichever one you want to call it. This upgrades the product to 70.5% and elevates us into the world's best product without any material losses as we recycle the overflow. This has been tested through by ALS at a pilot scale. Clearly, we generate a lot of tailings, 60 million tonnes per annum. We have some big thickening tanks. Settling is simple, not much clay, and has been verified by Uditech tests, which then leads to a very large tailings storage facility that will be constructed primarily from the mine overburden, filled via a centre distributor at 70% solids, a bit like toothpaste. It is there, 4.5 kilometres in diameter, and there's room for expansion. The supergrade product will then be slurried 55 kilometres to a railhead site at Broken Hill using centrifugal pumps, where the product will be dewatered, water recovered and sent back to site. We will need to build a rail loop and stockpile where rail loading facilities will need to be constructed. Rail will be loaded and then product transported to either Port Pirie or Whyalla, a luxury of 2 ports to choose from. We also see great potential for a pellet plant in Broken Hill. It is the world's best pellet feed, but it is not part of the current proposal. Now, CSA Global have reviewed the pre-feasibility study, as have many others, and have concluded the project is in good shape. And look, at the port, which we're about to get to, we will use transshipment to load Cape-sized vessels to transport to our customers. And now I'll just go back to a presentation, see how that goes. Okay, and we're back, which is great. Hang on. I'll just race through some of these. These were the backup in case the flyover didn't work. Now, regarding permitting and approvals, all the baseline surveys have been done, no issues have been identified, and native title has been extinguished. Before we close out on the project, I want to reiterate that it has a number of benefits, including the soft ore and the existing infrastructure that set it apart from other magnetite projects in terms of both viability and risk and complexity, or lack of complexity. Here's the project schedule as it stands, subject to attracting the funding. We expect approvals to take 15 to 18 months, the feasibility study to take around 15 months, and construction and pre-strip around 18 months, leading to production in around 3 to 3.5 years. So, in summary, the project is world-class, well set commercially and technically for development. We welcome involvement from all parties. However, the key step when we can engage with contractors and the audience is when we get the BFS funding. And I hope I have made the case that we think we can do it within 2 to 6 months. So thank you for listening, and over to questions, please. And I guess I'll just try and, well, I'll leave it there with that summary on the screen.
Thank you so much, Quentin. You handled that technology very well.
Thank you.
You went between those presentations really, really quickly. Very seamless. Thank you for the support. I do have some questions. I had a query from one of the audience in regard to a pre-qualification process to work with Hawsons Iron. Do you have a set pre-qualification process or a contact?
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question. Look, all inquiries can go through to info@capres.net.au, In terms of pre-qualification, at the moment the company is 100% focused on raising the feasibility funding, and anything outside of that, I guess, is a bit of a distraction. So those pre-qualifications, once we get the funding and start the drilling, I think that'll be the time where we will turn our minds to those important issues.
Absolutely. And can you talk to me a little bit more about, we were talking about the high quality of the product, the marketability of the product, and the opportunities for the future expansion of the project. How do you think that the relations between the Chinese marketplace and government and our own sort of homeland might impact on those growth opportunities and even your pricing?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I guess it's a complex field. And look, I'm not privy to what's going on in the geopolitical arena. The product, as I've made the case, has huge demand, and we have a public list of letters of intent and others that are not public from global customers. So in the Middle East, half of it's in the Middle East and other is Southeast Asia. So it's not all about China for us. It's Japan, it's Vietnam, it's Taiwan, it's the Middle East, and potentially elsewhere. China, of course, is very, very important. So we welcome Chinese customers, and I think at the moment China hasn't done anything to change its iron ore purchasing patterns. They're still very much needing Australian ore. I think more than half of their ore comes from Australia. They can't really afford not to buy our ore. And look, I don't see any of that dynamic changing. But I reckon we'll be looking for as diverse a customer base as possible, and one that will pay the highest price for this premium product. I dare say at the end of the BFS, or nearing the end of the BFS, there will be significant competition from various players, strategically from Japan and the Middle East and China, to secure some of this product, because there's not much of it around. Those looking for green steel and to reduce their emissions, there's not enough to go around. There will be some winners and losers, and the winners will be those that partner with us.
Absolutely. I'm getting a lot of commentary coming through on the discussion board, wishing the project good fortune and profitability moving forward to your expansion plans. How dependent do you think you are on the shareholder engagement as opposed to future contracts being secured to enable that growth?
Yeah, so look, there's two pathways to raise the feasibility funding. It's through the shareholders and through private equity, but it's also through the off-takers and the trading companies. We've been pursuing an off-take-led strategy when prices were low, but at the moment the equity interest is matching the off-take interest. And really it's up to the board to determine where the best value for shareholders is. But I think that times have never been better to move it forward. And it's nice to hear there's a lot of chatter out there, because we're certainly getting interest from off-takers and equity, private equity too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing the presentation with us today, Quinton. Ladies and gentlemen, Quinton Hill, a very exciting project.
Thanks very much, Nicola.